Hello everyone. Welcome back to another session on SQL Server. So today we'll be looking or we'll be focusing on optimization, security, and deployment. So just a second. So, like today's focus will be mainly making queries run faster and handling temporal date data, then protecting the database from malicious attacks and understanding hosting options. Okay, so let's get started. So first, let's discuss about constraints and auto increment. So it's just a review. Constraints are mostly a review we did in our previous session. So if you're directly coming to this session, I would advise please complete or have your previous recordings or look at the previous recordings. Now, for constraints and auto increments, if we look at building a bulletproof table, we enforce identity using auto increment, written as identity in SQL Server to automatically generate sequential numbers for primary. We use not null, check, and default to prevent bad data from entering the system. Okay. Now, when it comes to working with dates, dates at times becomes very tricky, and on like on top of it, they are very critical for any reporting or if you talk about any data related or any decision making systems. And in today's video or in today's session, we will cover how to get a current date or using get date, extract the specific parts of a date using year, month, and then also we will discuss how DATEDIFF, the difference between two dates can be calculated or extracted. On top of it, we will also see how to create index. By default, finding a specific row in a massive or big table requires you know us to scan through the entire database, right? Like every table, which we should be able to do that, or we should do that. Now, creating an index is exactly like the index at the back of a textbook, and it provides a map of data where you can scan and slowly or turn a slow system into a fast lookup kind of system. Okay. Now, on top of it, if we talk about views, so whenever we are writing any queries or we are writing any, we are using select clause, and then we are using whatever it is, whenever we are writing any queries or SQL statement, every time if you want to avoid writing the SQL statement, we can create what we call as virtual tables or views. Okay. So views are based on the result of a SQL statement. It is little different from procedures because to extract the result of a stored procedure, every time you have to execute the procedure. Whereas just like you have a table, right? So view has its own existence. Okay. And they are very good when it comes to security, because you can use views to provide access to sensitive informations. You can do row level security, and for simplifying complex joins for end users also you can use views. Okay. And if you don't want your end users to identify the source data where it's coming from, you can kind of encrypt it using a view, and then present the final view to your end users. Now, when it comes to SQL injection, so it is basically a web hacking technique where malicious users input SQL code into web forms. to destroy or expose your database. And basically, this particular process is very vulnerable as it concatenates user input directly into a query string. And the solution is you should be or you should prepare statements and parameters by passing inputs as parameters such as username, and database engine treats an input strictly as literal data. And when it comes to database hosting, so this is basically, as you can see, it's a conceptual wrap up of where databases live in modern world. You can have your database on premise, which like if you are installed servers on your hardware, so that is like an on premise. And if you have you can also use IaaS or infrastructure as a service, where you can rent a virtual machine in the cloud, okay, like a VM, and on the VM you can install SQL Server, so that will be infrastructure as a cloud. And then you can also have platform as a service, so like for example Azure database or Amazon RDS. So these are platforms as a service where the SQL and everything, you're just using the applications. You don't have to install anything. You just have to subscribe and then you can start using. Okay. And the cloud provider basically takes care of backups, patchings, the hardware requirements, and you just have to manage the data and pay for it. Okay. Pay for the service. Now let's go ahead and start with the coding part. Okay. Now let's open Visual Studio Code. Okay. So we will create a new query and we'll save it as basics. Okay. Now let's get started. So basically, I will create a database. I will call it as day 6. Today I'll call it as day 6 demo database and day 6 underscore demo. Okay. And then go, and since I'm using schools demo, I want to get out of schools demo and use this day 6 demo. So I'll also do that, and then I'll also use go. Okay. So now basically if I want to execute, I select everything and I execute. So now everything is successful. Okay, so now we are in day 6 demo. Okay. Now, for the very first statement is table creation with constraints and auto increment. Earlier we had used constraint, but today we'll also check how to do auto increment. Okay, I mean we had done, I think earlier also we had done an auto increment on a particular field using identity, but yeah, we will just look at it again. Okay, so so I'll use the table use accounts. Okay, and then the columns. Okay, now identity 1, 1, 1. So basically this is SQL Server's auto increment. Okay, it starts with 1 and goes up by 1. Okay, so first, okay, user ID, primary key, identity, primary key, username, primary key, and rather than using email, I will use something else called as account balance. Account balance decimal, not null. And rather than using not null, what I'll do, I'll default it to a certain value. Okay, so I'll default it to 0.00. Okay, account balance. Now, next is I want to check. I want to use a check constraint and ensure that balance never drops below 0. So constraint check positive balance, and then I want to use check account balance is greater than equal to 0. Okay. Now, I want to also generate when a particular record has gone into the system. Okay. When a record was added. So for that, I will use created at column, and here the data type will be get date, and default would be get date. So this get date function basically gives me current date. Okay. Now, so I'm good. So now if I go ahead and execute, okay, that's good. Execute. So now it has been created. So now if I just go ahead and do select star from user accounts. Okay, so I'm getting, so since I have not inserted any records, that's why I'm not getting any values. Okay, so now the next is we have to insert data, and notice like what we will do, we will skip user ID and this created date, because user ID is I have used identity, and created date I have set up a default as get date. Okay, now let's see how it behaves. Okay, so again insert into user accounts. I'll use username. There is no email. Username. Okay, an email got added. That's fine. Okay, username, email, account balance, and values I'll put in as admin underscore user, and or else I'll not, I don't want email. Okay, yeah. I'll put in email as abc at the rate gmail.com. Okay, and then value I can put in as 1500. Okay, and next value, okay, I want to put it in quotes. Okay, next I want to do another insert into email and account balance. Again, I want to use account balance. Values, I will be using admin user, sorry, guest user. Guest user. .com, and value I'll put in as 500. Okay, so now if I want to execute, I can just execute these two lines. Okay, now I'm having these two records have been inserted. So now if I just go ahead and execute, so now these two values are. So now in user ID, you can see I'm getting 1 and 2 for created date, even though I had not used any value, it is just populating the current date and time. Okay, so in hour, minute, second, and millisecond. Okay, now next is I mean let's work with dates. Okay, let me show you a couple of example. I mean, let me show you example for dates. Okay, now let's pretend the guest user was created 45 days ago. Okay, so what I'll do, I will update this. Okay, update this guest user 45 days back. Okay, so what I'll do, update user accounts. Okay, now I want to update username and date. Okay, update user account and then set created at, I will put in like 2025 08 and 50. Okay, I'm putting the state where I can use user ID equal to 1 as well. So I'll use, I mean, user ID equal to 2. So user ID equals to 2. Okay, for the second row, guest user. Since I already know user ID, I'll put user ID 2. Otherwise, if you are not sure you want to use username, you can put username equals to guest user. Okay, so now if I go ahead and execute this, okay, now if I go back, okay, so now you can see I'm getting like 15 days back record, okay, for guest user. Okay. Now, next, if I mean, let's play around with the date functions. Okay, so first I want to use select username, email, created at. Okay, these columns are already present. Okay, username, select username, email created at, from user accounts. Okay, if I do that and just execute, okay, I'll get these three. So now, if I want to display the year as a column, okay, I can do that. I'll use the function year created at as created year. Then I also want to use month created at as created month. And then I want to find out what is the difference. Okay, the days since the account was created. Okay, since how many days the account has been created. Okay, so we'll calculate it from present day, this today. Okay, so to do that, I mean, yeah, we can also use day as well. So I'll use day. Now I want to see from current day, what is the difference? I mean, the created date and the current date difference. Okay, so I'll use date. Okay. Now, whenever I'm using current date diff, it will accept some parameters. Okay, the first parameter is what output you want. Okay, like for example, if you want year, you can use year. If you want month, you can use month, or else if you want day, day. So it's like between the current day and this created day, if you want to extract how many months or how many days or how many years. Okay. So for now, I'll just use day created at get date, because get date will give you the current date, and then as days creation. Okay. Now, apart from that, let me also show you year as well. Date diff. So I'll also show month. Okay. Get date as month creation from user. So now let me go ahead and execute. So now if I go ahead and execute, so here you can see I'm having username, email, created date, then it's extracting the year, then it's extracting the month, and then it's extracting the day. After that, day since creation, this is showing 0 because one of the values is the same day, right? So it's showing 0. And since it was like 45 or 15 months back data, so it's showing me 15 days back data, so it's showing me 15 days. Now, again, days since creation, okay, how many days since this was created? So it was showing me 293 days. Okay, days since creation, okay. And then here it's showing days since creation. So yeah, so month is this, and days since creation, it's showing 295 days. And then finally, month since creation, it's 10 days. Okay, it's 1 year back data, right? So 293 days, and this is 10 days. Now, this way you can basically play around. Apart from that, there are also other functions available. Like if I want to add specific number of days to my current to the date column. Okay, so I can use date add. How many day, month, year? If you want to add whatever it is, you can add. For now, I'll add day, 30 day created, and then I'll use as created plus 30 days. Okay, so now if I go ahead and execute, okay, so now created plus 30 days. This is what we are getting. Now, next, we will create index. Okay, this index normally helps greatly when it comes to performance optimization. So if we are frequently searching for users by the username, we should index that column. Okay. Now, if you are frequently using on a certain column, but it is a text column, okay, and every time you keep adding text, so recommendation is to create an index column for that particular. Create index values for that particular column. This way, you will be able to enhance your performance. Okay, so because it's difficult when it comes to text searching, it is difficult, but when it comes to number matching, it is easier. Now, so yeah, so if you want to create index, so create index. Okay, I want to name it as IX user account. Okay, but I don't want to use email. I want to use username. Okay, and on which field? On user accounts on table, and then column name, which is username. Okay. So now if I go ahead and I want to execute, I can execute this. Okay. So now I have executed. Now index has been created. Okay. So now if you execute the select star, now when it comes to indexing, so now you can see index has been created. Okay. Now let's talk about views. Okay. So as I told you, so views are basically um, uh, when it comes to creating a query or using a query, so you can directly use a query and save it as a view, so that every time you do not have to run query. And top of it, if you want to add some security features, you can also add security features on your views as well. Okay. Now, okay, so to create a view, so I'll use Go. Okay, then create view. As now you have to provide your query. Okay, so select username, select user ID, username, then created at from user accounts. Okay, and then finally, okay. Now this way, so if I go ahead and execute, so my view has been created. So it is created in day 6. So let me just refresh databases. So day 6. So now if I want to check views, so I can also check views. So in real-time scenario, whenever you're working on a certain project, if they tell you like the table name or something like that, so most of the times it will be like, it could be like a table, and if you do not find it in the table, it is most probably a view that they have created. Okay. So you have to go in and look at the view. Okay. So don't get confused if they say like this is the table name, but often people uh, use the term view when it comes, I mean, use the table names, and they don't differentiate between a table and a view. But if you go at the back end, so this is how a view is created. So now next time, if I want to extract user ID, username created at these columns from user accounts, I don't have to write the query. So I can just go ahead and use select star from, because my view name is VW marketing user list, right? So if I go ahead and execute this, so I'll get this query. Okay. Now, oh, now if the marketing team or someone wants to query, like totally unaware the accounting balance column where it exists, they can just query the view and they'll get the result. Next example is SQL injection and parameters. Okay. Now, let's talk about a scenario first. So suppose you have a web login form, and which asks you for a user. And then a very dangerous way is a string concatenation in application code. And then you have a user type which says admin underscore user, which we have. And then someone is adding like admin underscore user or one equals to one. So what will happen? The app will run select star from user accounts where username is equal to admin underscore user or one equal to one. And since one equal to one will satisfy, they will be able to get into the system. Okay. Now, a better and secure way of doing it uh, is basically we can create a stored procedure. Okay. And then we can pass the username through the stored procedure. Okay. The output of the stored procedure. Now, so to do that, so I'll create a procedure go um, safe user login. Where can this is the parameter. Next, we will use as begin. Okay. And then we'll start select user ID, username, and account balance from user accounts. Okay. Where username is equal to input username. Okay. Finally, um, and then okay. So now if you go ahead and execute, okay, execution is successful. So now if you test it out, okay, execute. Safe user login. See, remember, if there is only one parameter, then you can directly pass it with the parameter name. If there are multiple parameters, so you can also, I mean, if there are multiple parameters, you can use multiple parameter name and then you can add equal to. So like for example, if I do like at the rate, okay. Okay, so this is for single parameter. Okay, so now if I go ahead and execute this, if I'm having multiple parameters, I can just pass in multiple values with at whatever the parameter name it is and then the values. Okay, so now if I go ahead and execute, now we see user ID, admin user, and 1500. Okay, next, let's think like the hacker. Okay, now if we go ahead and create or pass in the value. Okay. Admin user or one equals one. Okay. But yeah, so yeah, one equals one. Okay. Which is a SQL injection. A second. Okay. So if we are doing that now, let's execute this. Okay. So we will not be able to see anything. Okay. So that's why it's advisable, like whenever you are setting up something, so rather than, opening up the entire table, you wrap it up with a view or a stored procedure, so that what happens from security standpoint also, the there is a layer that gets created over your query. Okay. So with this, we will end today's session. If you have any comments, feel free to reach out. Thank you.